Hey everybody. I hope your summer break, or I'm sorry, spring break has gone pretty good. We'll get to summer soon, but this is the video since I'm going to be at a conference. I'm going to make for you. So I'm looking to do three videos because we have three class days. So bear with me. I'm going to try to keep it like the class, but there's no interaction, which takes up a good chunk of time. So these videos might go a little faster than you expect. But hopefully you guys learn just as much out of these videos as well. Uh, One thing I want to say is about your projects that you guys turned in on, well, shoot, your executive interview projects. They were pretty good. I liked them. You guys should be able to see all your grades now. A couple of you guys have put some notes on there. If I took points away, I tried to make sure I put some type of feedback in there on the rubric and on your papers. Um, and it quite impressive. I could tell that every group learned something from these experiences with this. So I hope you guys continue to keep in connection with these folks, and that way, you can take these relationships further. Um, yeah. Anyway, moving on here. So, hey, I'm in the little corner here. So organizational structure and change is this week's topic. And well, let's jump right into it. So organizational structure. So when we're looking at structure, in regards to management and the business, essentially, it's a system for accomplishing and connecting work activities. So if you think about it, this provides a framework for roles, various people with authority because of these structures and these frameworks. And it also provides a way for communication. Uh, when you want to send something up higher, usually you got to send it to your manager and then it goes up to the next level. When things come down, sometimes they come directly to you, but generally they come down the chain from your boss's boss to you, your boss to you. So there's that flow of information and flow of and the authority and roles that everybody has. But organizations vary. So there's different structures that have different degrees of control. There's some that offer more flexibility, and then there's also specialization. So think about your chosen field. There's a lot of specialization you can do within your own field. So if you're going to be a nurse, well, what kind of nurse? Are you going to be hospice care? Are you going to be emergency room? Are you going to be an accountant? Are you going to work on corporate tax returns? Or are you going to do personal tax returns? Or are you going to work on mergers and acquisitions? There's all these different ways we can get into specializing within our own fields. So an organizational structure will help you do your job, your specialization. And a well-designed structure enables accountability and coordination. Um, you know exactly who you need to talk to. If you need to talk to human resources about taking some vacation time and something with that or travel, you know specifically who to go talk to, and we can go from there. Another thing is, you also know who may not be able to help you because of specialization. But all right, so the next thing here we have organizational design. So this is how an organization is actually designed to function. It's going to vary based on size, the industry, the goals of the organization, and external factors. So a large company is going to have different ways of designing. They're going to have more structure and more hierarchies in a large company, where if you're with a startup company, it's going to be more loose. We'll talk about that I believe, maybe the next slide. Industries, or how it's done, let's say in supply chain, my background is very different from, let's say, how a hospital would operate. So you have to be a little bit aware of different ways companies can be structured internally or designed. They all are designed to accomplish a goal. Um, and of course, those goals vary. If you want to be where the people are at, you're probably going to have smaller locations, but more spread out and where the people are. But if you're an organization that is more of a people come to you, well, you can have more centralized operations put into one location rather than being all over the place. And of course, there's external factors. There might be some regulations, some uh, laws and stuff like that that might force a certain design. Um, so with this, you're going to have clearly defined roles, hierarchies, and workflows that are going to actually improve efficiency. That's what they're designed to do, to improve efficiency. Um, that's why I say the larger companies that have been around or 100 years or whatnot, they are essentially extremely efficient because they've gone through all the heartache, all the trouble, the roadblocks, the stumbling points to get to where they are. And of course, organizations can reorganize, redesign themselves because of their hitting the next stage in their growth, or technology is happening and they've used the technology to its fullest advantage. So, of course, there's also strategic changes. The organization might be headed down one direction, but the board of directors has decided, well, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to move over to here. We're kind of seeing that nowadays with DEI. A lot of companies adopted DEI and they made changes based on those um, from a strategic standpoint. And now companies are backing off from DEI. Um, I'm not saying you should agree or disagree. I'm just stating, that's what's kind of happening. But organizational change is something that we always see out there. These changes can be forced on us from being from internal factors or external factors. Internal, let's say you got a new CEO, or there's an activist stakeholder, shareholder that has gotten onto the board and they want to see change in the organization because they've bought X% of the company, so now they can force themselves to have a seat on the board of directors. And many other things too that can cause from internal. Now, external, market trends, competition, leadership changes. We saw a huge leadership change in the president of the United States. That is causing a lot of organizations to change how they do things. You can just do a Google search and you can find plenty of organizations that have changed, and it may or may not have been related to the presidential election, or the president actually taking office. Uh, so think about it, and don't just think from one point of view. Try to think about it from multiple points of view to get a more well-rounded picture of why is the organization doing that. So these changes affect the policies and the culture of an organization. So think about a startup that is loose. There's everybody's kind of free range. They're doing their own thing. They're bringing their pets into the office, whatever you want to think. There's a foosball table in the break room. Well, as the organization grows, that might not be something they can sustain. So their culture might have to change, where people are now expected to accomplish X amount of work per day in order to the company to keep making progress. So a culture can change along those lines, just from the organization growing or shrinking. Technologies, there was a whole push because of COVID for work from home. So that changed a lot of cultures. I mean, one thing I miss about going into the office before COVID was I got to see people. And then after COVID, I got to see people on my computer screen. I hated that because it's not like I could just walk past somebody's office, see somebody's in and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And just kind of do some small talk or just catch up with them. Maybe go to lunch, at the cafeteria. That was taken away from many people who liked that kind of thing when COVID hit, and we had the whole change in how we did things. But of course, there's also business models. Some companies are designed to be remote entirely from the beginning. Others are not meant to be that way because they rely on that collaboration, kind of like spontaneous collaboration, like software designers. It's great if you run into something as a software developer. You can ask somebody next door what their thoughts are and how to solve the problem. Now, if the company has remote software developers, now they got to set up a Zoom meeting and they might not be available, or Teams or whatnot, Slack. All these technologies might be in there. That makes it sometimes more difficult to keep business going, or keep progress going on a day-to-day basis. So, as a manager, though, you guys play a crucial role in navigating these changes. So it's good to stay current on what's going on. So when things do come, it's a easier transition. If you see something coming, you can get people on board with a change. Whereas if somebody, rather than being kind of blindsided by a change, I should say. So by getting people on board, you minimize resistance to the change. There was a lot of people that hated to go online when COVID struck. I'm sure you guys hated to go online when COVID struck. Um, that was not something that people planned for. There was many people who, uh, I hate to say the word fail, but they failed to make that transition, or they were dragged kicking and screaming into the transition. Uh, uh, but then again, some people just retired, and left their jobs because they just didn't want to make that change. So we have that resistance out there to change, and everybody has something that they will resist change about. Um, so, like for me, resisting change, if like let's say the Pepsi company goes out of business, I am not drinking Coca-Cola. That's just one thing for me. I just don't like Coca-Cola. Now, some of you may love it, or you might love Monster or Red Bull or whatever other drinks you guys drink these days. And so we have to be aware of what's possibly coming. So, let's see, moving on here. Formal versus informal organization. So, think about any organization that pops into your head. Formal organizations have clearly defined roles. They have organizational charts, like this one that I have on the screen here. This is the Bureau of, or I'm sorry, this is the Department of Interior for the United States, the U.S. Department of Interior. So they have, the National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife, Indian Affairs, Land Management, USGIS, or USGS, I should say, and a lot of other ones there that you may or may not have heard of. But everybody knows what their role is in a formal organization. They were hired for a specific reason. So they know their responsibilities. It was clear from the beginning. Yes, responsibilities do grow and they do shrink sometimes depending on the current needs of the organization. But it's pretty clear when you know that, you were hired for this specific role, then you know that this person's your boss and that this other person is not. You know that right from the beginning. So informal organizations. So think of a startup where you have the CEO, the founder of the organization, and then they are hiring people one at a time. So you have a more informal network there. So people are more fluid in what their job is. Yes, one day you might be hired to be an accountant, but you might be cleaning the next day because it needs to get done and it's a small company of 10 people and it's your turn to clean the bathroom or whatever the case may be. Um, think about, you're going to school for a certain reason. Think about what you might get assigned to if you are at a small company. What might you do on a temporary basis or maybe even adopt as your permanent part of your permanent job. So these interpersonal networking is huge. Uh, but with this informal, it actually could increase morale and it fosters innovation because there is no boundaries. There's no divide between people. When you get into your organizations, you're going to see that, for example, finance and accounting, they both deal with numbers, but you're going to see that, the finance people don't want to play with the accounting people, and the accounting people don't want to play with the finance people. It's like each one of them has their ball and they don't want to use it to play with the other folks. Like little kids, it's mine. Um, You know, we can eliminate that in a more informal organization. Now, when we do this, it's not exclusive one versus the other. We can have some type of hybrid between the two. So think about that. Think about what needs to be formal in an organization versus informal. Um, Recognizing that, and you can use that knowledge to leverage both structures, and that can enhance your team's productivity, employee engagement, morale. Become one of those rated great places to work for whatever year it is. Uh, you can actually do that and uh, have more people being happy with coming to work. They enjoy coming to work instead of, oh, I need to work so I can get money so I can pay my bills and live. You know, if someone gets into that mindset, then maybe they're just in the wrong field, but or the wrong company. But as a manager, you can maybe alter that by adding some informal to that formal. But then again, if you have an informal organization, you do need some formal in there because you have to hold people accountable. So the formal allows you to do that easier. The formal, that's that clarity, the consistency, accountability, decision making, and task delegation. All that kind of thing is easier when you have a formal organization. But like I said before, you don't need to have 100% of both. You can have 75% formal, 25% informal, or some other ratio in there. So think about that. All right. So types of organizational structures. Now, if you think about organizations that you are aware of, you know, there's some that are that have bureaucracy. Um, so they're really hierarchical, rigidly structured. They have clearly defined roles. So, um, one of these, you can think of the military, right? There's a clear chain of command. They have standardized procedures. They're clearly defined job roles. This works well in large organizations such as the military, such as, let's say, the Walmarts. There's a lot of this because of the people's need for the clearness of this. Um, but having this type of structure can slow down innovation. You get people who get kind of, I don't know, let's say tunnel vision, where they can't think of ways to improve. They they go from the point of this is how it is. I'm going to keep doing it this way because there is a standardized procedure. Why should I try to attempt to change the standard? Um, so that's one way. Then the next one we have here is product structure. This is where people are kind of grouped into divisions or some type of larger group based on products. So if you think of, let's say, an auto manufacturer, let's just use Ford since that's what I drive myself. You might have a group of employees that are structured around the F-150 or the F series trucks. So they would all be focused on the F series trucks, but they would not be focused on, let's say, the Ford Escape, the Ford Fusion, or any of the other ones, the Bronco, uh, the Mustang. You wouldn't be focusing on those because you are part of a specific product group or a service group. So product or service groups. So this encourages people to become very specialized within those product lines. The With that specialization, they can be held to a higher standard for accountability because they are so specialized. Now, when I say specialized, you get to a certain point, you become known as an expert. So think about that. Is there something that you might become an expert in your chosen career path? You're choosing your majors. One day you're going to be considered an expert. So if you're in nursing, you might become that old nurse who can just look at somebody and say, "Oh, better check on him. He's about to drop," or something like that. Or you can take a look at a balance sheet and you can go, that's not right, or that company's going to fail, just because you can look at it and you have that extensive knowledge specialization. However, though, this can lead to duplication because you're separated by product groups or divisions or service types. So when I mentioned, let's say the Ford F series trucks, F-150, 250, 350, all those kind of trucks. If you're specialized in there, well, there's also somebody like your counterpart who's also specialized, let's say, in the Ford Bronco line, right? So now there's two of you that are doing the same exact job. So there's the duplication of resources. And it also can create inefficiencies because you might be extremely efficient at your job because of you've been there so long and you're developed that specialization, but your counterparts in another product line might have only just got into their position. So there's some inefficiencies there. Um, but there's also another one here called geographic structure. These are more because they're geographically separated. This could be separated by countries, could be separated by state lines, cities, regions. Think of any type of separation. So you're going to have in order to maintain control, you're going to have a leadership at each location, and that leadership is going to answer to the next higher level. So using Walmart, for example, so you got corporate Walmart, then you have markets, or I'm sorry, you have in the United States, they have East, Central, and West, like regions or divisions. I forget what they call it. But then within each of those, they have markets, and then they have the store level. So think about that. That's a lot of levels in there. So there is some duplication because you have multiple markets in a region. You have multiple regions in a country like the United States. So you have some duplication, but there's going to become some inefficiencies, some variances from where the standard procedures are in this, um, which can be good and can be bad because each area has to adapt to its local area. Um, you cannot run uh, a location in the United States the same way you would run it in Canada or in Mexico or in Great Britain. You can't do that. You have to change it to meet the requirements of the local government, local regulations, laws, all that kind of stuff. So what might be perfectly fine in Canada might not be allowed in Mexico in terms of operations. So think about that. Um, it's way this will cause inconsistencies, but uh, acknowledging these inconsistencies and being aware of how to address them is one thing you need to acknowledge as a leader in this area. All right. Bureaucracy. So we can divide or dive a little bit more into this. So specialization. And I mentioned earlier the nurses being a hospice nurse versus emergency room care versus labor and delivery. There's specialization within nursing there. But then there's in the business world, it's the same. So this specialization allows you to focus on the tasks that are aligned with your expertise. So if you're in labor and delivery as a nurse, you probably don't need to worry about some things that might walk into the emergency room. Think of any type of injury that might walk into the emergency room. That's not happening in the labor and delivery department of a hospital. There's women coming in that are pregnant, they're leaving not pregnant and have an extra, a kid with them. At least that's the goal for labor and delivery. Everybody's safe and sound, healthy, and all that kind of stuff. Um, but you can specialize in that way in there. And emergency room, you have to be more specialized in treating those emergent cases. Somebody got hit by a car, somebody cut their finger when they were making dinner, whatever the case may be, whatever walks into the emergency room. Could be somebody had a sniffle that should have gone to maybe their primary care doctor the next day. All this kind of stuff walks into the emergency room, so they have to specialize a different way than labor and delivery. Um, so same thing with accounting and finance and marketing and all the other majors that we have here at the university. You guys will specialize in something. Um, you might say that you can do everything. That's great, but you are going to specialize in one area. That's going to be the biggest thing for you. Okay. Command and control. So this is that hierarchy system. You have a clear leader, you have a clear boss, you know who their boss is, who's that you can go all the way up looking at a hierarchy chart, um, and you know what your authority is as a manager at whatever level you are in that hierarchy. Just from my own background in supply chain, I could approve up to a certain dollar amount when I was working for the federal government for a purchase. I could approve up to, well, it varied, but the last number I was at was $500,000. I could do that. I didn't need to ask anybody else. If it was above that, I knew who I could talk to and get approval. If it was above another number, well, then it had to go to a higher level. But I still had to go to the first person above me, and then they would take it to the next level. So there's that command and control. It clearly defines what your decision making ability is, and also where your accountability ends. So if I got permission to make that purchase, let's say it was $1 million to make a purchase, and they said, go ahead and do it, and I did it, and something went wrong, well, while I'm accountable because I was the manager level that did it, it, the level above me would still be accountable, probably even more because they gave me permission to do it. So they should have made sure that I did it right or my team did it right or whatever the case was. So the accountability is there. This can slow down things because of you have to get approval from different levels. Especially if someone's gone on vacation and you need them specifically to approve it. Well, do you call them when they're on vacation? Are they even going to return your call if they're on vacation? It depends the type of organization you're with. If people are dedicated like that, well, they'll answer the phone and answer work-related questions while on vacation. Or if your organization even allows them to do that because they're on vacation, you shouldn't want to interrupt somebody's vacation. Would you want somebody interrupting your vacation with a work question? I hope not. But, what is the culture of the organization that you're with? Centralization here, do we make all that decision making power in, let's say, at corporate headquarters, or do we spread some of it down to the lower levels and, let's say, more regions? Like Walmart, I use that example with the multiple levels for different areas. Well, at what level can they make what decisions? And knowing that can allow the upper levels of management to focus on other things such as strategic goals, strategic activities. But some things you're not going to delegate down to lower levels. So this by centralizing things, I would say you keep all that up at certain levels. It's going to keep consistency and standardization because there's one level that's making the decisions, and they're going to make similar decisions every time uh, a situation comes up that fits those criteria. But this also slows things down. So if you're um, in a fast-paced environment, you want that decision-making power lower. So because those people are getting that real-time information and they're the ones that can act on it the fastest. However, if it has to go all the way up to the central headquarters and then a decision needs to be made, well, that's going to take time and you might miss an opportunity. Um, but also with the centralization, there might be decisions that need to be made considering the local environments, local regulations, and customs and practices that the central headquarters may not know, so they don't make the best decision they can. This is unfortunate, but it's like somebody in the United States making a decision for a Mexican location of their company. That might not work, or it might work just fine, depending on the decision. But there's different challenges depending on where your organization's located and spread out. So one of the best ways to do this is to actually formalize a lot of things, put it in writing. Um, so there's a lot of, you can define rules, policies, practices, standard operating procedures or SOPs, to make it easier for employees. They can just bring up these documents and follow them. So when that's done, you ensure that consistency and it reduces um, the uh, the chance that people make a decision because they don't know how to make the decision or they don't know the right decision they should make. Having all this stuff in place will clear that up. However, if you formalize too much, you're going to create a lot of rigidity and limited ability for people to adapt to whatever situation. So, or especially when change is needed, if your organization is too formal, that change might not happen, even though it must happen. So, all right. All right. So this one, mechanistic versus organic structures, so business structures, organizational structures. So mechanistic, so think of like the picture here. You have steel girders or steel beams being placed for a new building. Think about that. Those are rigid. That is not going to bend um, unless a great force is put on them. It's clearly defines, the hierarchy, different levels in a structure. And it's these beams are very specialized. These are structural beams to take the weight of a building and transfer it down to the ground. So this right here, is one way to support a building, but think about it in terms of an organization. So having this mechanistic structure, we're going to have a clear chain of command and strict hierarchy levels. You're going to see the executive level, you're going to see the director level, you're going to see the manager level, you're going to see, all the way down to the bottom. Um, so people can focus on what they specialize in. And you know what your task is because that's the role you have. If you get promoted, you know what your roles are for the next level. Um, so but mechanistic structures bring they centralize decision making. They don't really delegate that decision making power down to the bottom level. They hold back some of that decision making ability. But that does maintain control and it does maintain consistency across the organization. So that is a plus. However, when you're in the organization and you know what decision to make, but you're not allowed to make it, it can be extremely frustrating because it's hindering your job. That's one thing when you become specialized, you know exactly what you need to do, but you might have to get permission from the people up higher, and they're not specialists, they're not experts in what you do. So there is that drawback. Um, Makes things harder to adapt to rapid changes. It lacks that flexibility. Um, but it does work in stable environments. The organization's growing. It's, been growing consistently, predictably. So think about mechanistic structures. Think about government agencies, large manufacturing organizations, some hospitals that have been there forever. A lot of these environments are mechanistic. They are that rigid. They have that highly specialized parts to them. Of course, the organizational structures. These are, think about a startup. They're flexible. They're very adaptive. Decentralized decision making. Now, that doesn't mean that decisions aren't discussed. It's just they don't hold all those decisions at the upper levels. They allow lower levels to make decisions. Um, so it by doing that allows all employees to contribute to the excuse me contribute to the organization through many ways, such as innovation. Anybody can come up with an innovation. right? But you're more likely to going to see people try to innovate an organic structure type organization where people in a mechanistic are going to be like, I can't go against the status quo. But organic, being that flexible, free spirit type organization, they're going to be like, hey, let's give it a try. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, well, at least we tried. Now we know. So um, it makes things, it makes things better because it allows you to collaborate like that. Um, and everybody can put in their input and if they're aware of what's going on. There's some flexible job roles. So if you wanted to do something a little bit different, let's say you're in accounting, but you want to learn about supply chain, in an organic structure, there's that possibility you can get involved in that. Who knows? Maybe you want to turn over to the dark side and go supply chain. Hey, it works. Um, but these having a organic structure works best with dynamic industries where rapid change is the normal course of business. So think about technology startups, creative industries. Things change, people's tastes change, market trends change. You got to stay ahead of it or at least keep up with it. So organic structures allow that. Or the mechanistic, that's like the more stable organization, stable environments that they work in. So one of the potential drawbacks of organic structures is it leads to ambiguity um, in many roles, and it also hinders decision making. It could cause some decision making inefficiencies um, because you're letting people make decisions that they may not be qualified to do because they're not specialized or they don't have any idea, but they're expected to know. So, like I mentioned previously in this video, the hybrid approach may be the best way. This probably is the best way. You're not 100% mechanistic, you're not 100% organic. You're right in the middle, or some ratio of each. So, many organizations use both because they find it helps with how the company operates, or maybe a department, such as, let's say, so the supply chain function of a company might be more mechanistic, but the research and development department might be more organic, or the marketing folks might be more organic structured than, the warehouse of the company. So it comes down to the industry, the size of the company, how long the company's been in business, the business's strategy. All this kind of stuff comes into factors of this. So, um, yeah, I'm going to stop here for today. I've been talking for about 40 some odd minutes straight. And yeah, that's a lot of talking for a video. And I still got two more videos to go. All right. But I hope you guys are learning something and hope you guys actually do watch these. Well, I expect you guys to watch them. I do expect you guys to learn something. So, what you learn, I'll leave that up to you. But I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. So, uh, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you next time I see you.